Good morning, Hero Wars fans. In this video, I would like to share with you the information we know at this time about our new hero, Amira. Amira is an interesting hero with some counter skills against all types of heroes. However, as is the fate of all magic damage heroes, Amira seems to have a hard time with Isaac and Rufus. First, let's talk about Amira's first skill. Amira's first skill is a time delay type ranged attack, with a time lag between the activation of the first skill and the actual damage to the opponent. Between the activation of Amira's first skill and the activation of the damage, the amount of damage that is triggered decreases according to the amount of damage inflicted by the enemy, which creates a time lag that, depending on how it is done, can suddenly cause large damage to the opponent. Amira's second skill is a counter to critical attacks, making her a perfect match for Helios. Against an enemy team that has no countermeasures against magical attacks, Amira's second skill functions to cause a critical fumble, attack miss when a critical occurs, against an enemy whose main status is agility. In other words, by using Amira and Helios together, the specifications are designed to cause the opponent's critical attack to fail and at the same time inflict the same amount of damage on the opponent as the enemy's critical attack failure. Furthermore, Helios, which has a very high magic attack power, adds to Amira's magic attack buff regardless of the time difference. Moreover, this second skill of Amira is a skill effect that does not correspond to a debuff that affects the battlefield, so even if the enemy team uses Sebastian, Amira's second skill cannot be cancelled. However, since Amira's second skill targets only heroes whose main status is agility, it is not likely to be as strong against all critical attacks as it is against some heroes whose main status is strength, such as Ju. When a hero whose main status is agility is buffed by critical and a critical attack occurs, it can be a very unpleasant skill because the damage taken by this side is drastically reduced. This means that in a battle where Sebastian and Yasmin's critical attacks are frequent, there is a strong possibility that the enemy team will suffer heavy damage from Amira's counter-attacks. Next, I would like to discuss Amira's third skill. Amira's third skill is a counter skill against magical heroes. In other words, Amira's third skill is a counter to enemies whose main status is intelligence. Enemy heroes whose damage is calculated by intelligence will have lower attack power but higher recovery power, so only enemy healers will benefit from the opposite. However, since Amira's third skill also deals damage to the enemy, the overall effect of the skill activation itself is positive. Finally, there is Amira's fourth skill, which takes away and nullifies the special buffs of heroes whose main status is strength, allowing them to deal heavy damage to their enemies while nullifying Advari's and Astaroth's protection skills. However, Amira's third skill cannot nullify the enemy's stun attack. Amira is a very peaky and tricky hero. I will analyze Amira's abilities comprehensively. Speaking of the offensive power that Amira possesses, it is a counterbalance to the enemy team's critical attacks, whose main status is agility. This means that Amira will have an advantage against Yasmin, Sebastian, Daredevil, Artemis, and Ishmael. When facing Amira, it can be countered to some extent by putting Isaac in his own team, who can counter magic attacks. Is it that Isaac will be used more often as a countermeasure against Amira? So magical hero is going to be at an increasing disadvantage from here on out. Let's talk about how to use Amira. One way to use Amira is to use Helios and Amira together in the Grand Arena or against teams with critical hit attacks. When used for guild war or arena defense, Amira is considered unsuitable for defensive battles because of its susceptibility to counters. The value of Isaac, which has a very strong counter element even against Amira, seems to have increased, but this does not mean that a team with Isaac cannot be defeated by combining it with other attacks. With the arrival of Amira, players who enjoyed hero wars with one main team may be forced to change the heroes they train, as they have more attack options. Hero wars is a gameplay in which you must eventually be able to handle multiple countermeasure teams to reach the top, so once you have finished training your main team, you must train multiple countermeasure teams. I'll wrap up the story. The appearance of Amira seems to suggest a direction for the future of hero wars. With the creation of the new game element Asgard and the introduction of the pet Axel, basic artifact buffing tactics became less effective. In the past, Hero Wars was won by simply being aware of the synergy of the number one artifact between heroes, but recently Hero Wars has become more about teaming up to take advantage of the synergy of the skills that heroes have. In the current Hero Wars, there is an increased need to make better use of control and support heroes. Thank you for watching the video until the last part. I'll see you in my next video.